Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, whatever time of day it is when you are listening to this podcast. I hope it is a good one. Welcome to the first, not sure yet, inaugural episode of the Expert Nerd Podcast. And I am one of your revolving hosts, Avery Holt. And with me this recording session evening is...
Hi, I'm Matt. I was here last time as well when we did our top 5 lists. Today we got something a little pretty special for you.
So at the time of the recording of this episode, the final episode of the Skywalker trilogy, isn't that what this one's called?
Technically, it's not a trilogy because there's 9 of them, but...
No, of this 3.
It's just, the 7, 8, and 9 Star Wars.
The third trilogy of the Star Wars movies comes out tomorrow.
Technically,
in theaters.
it's out now.
Somewhere it's out
it's on
right
theaters. Now. Yeah, it came out 10 minutes ago.
And so we thought for this episode we would go through and rank all of our favorite existing episodes 1 through 10.
Well, 1 through 8 plus Rogue One and Solo.
All 10 movies, yeah. And so that's basically what we're going to do now, and we're going to give you our thoughts, questions, concerns as we roll through this list.
Now, before we do that, we do want to say we have been watching The Mandalorian. Technically, that is not a movie, so it is not in our rankings.
Yeah.
But if it were, it would be very high up.
Oh, yeah. It's fantastic. If you have not watched The Mandalorian, you should. And
also, where have you been?
Also, I don't
think
we need to say it, but we're not getting paid for this.
But Disney, if you're listening,
we would gladly take it.
Jon Favreau, if you're listening, first of all, huge fan. You play Happy Hogan, great. Second of all, yes.
All right, so we're gonna go from number 10 down to number 1. So least, if there's a least, they're all pretty decent movies. Number 10 to number 1, and
kind of like last week on our other podcast. This isn't a definitive ranking of what we think is actually the best movie. This is just simply our favorites. We each have a list, and you can disagree. I understand you will disagree for various reasons.
This list is a very rough estimate of our opinions of the Star Wars movies. So do with that information what you will. So this week, or this episode, I'm going to kick things off. And so for number 10 in my list of ranking the Star Wars movies, number 10 for me is going to be Attack of the Clones. Episode 2 of the prequel trilogy, Attack of the Clones, and it really should have been called Attack of the Computer Animated Lucasfilms. And there's tons of reasons why I think this is number 10 on my list, and that is definitely one of them. The technology has come a long way since Attack of the Clones, and
it's only been 20 years.
And that movie did not, the CGI in the original prequel trilogy did not necessarily age well, and it was a time where that was emerging technology. They pretty much invented all of it, and they were like, let's just put it in a movie. What could go wrong? And they did a little bit of it in Phantom Menace, and then they're like, oh, that was kind of okay. We could do the entire movie in front of a blue screen. And they did. Looking at you, Droid Factory.
Oh, my
God. Other than that, really, that's my biggest nitpick with the movie. It was a strange concept to do most of the movie in special effects, and I think that drove a lot of decisions that they made with going to Geonosis and having a CGI alien planet. And I'm all for CGI, but it was a little much in Attack of the Clones.
Okay, and that'll bring me to my number 10. So I went a little differently on this, and I chose Attack of the Clones because I just, that is since it came out, my least favorite Star Wars movie. It felt like not much really happened, not much really moved forward. And I know a lot did, but because of how slow the movie was, that's why it felt that way. When I was a kid and even into adulthood, there were rare times when I could even stay awake during that movie. And if you know me, which many of you listening probably do at this point, you know I'm a huge movie person. I pay attention. I don't fall asleep during movies. That's not
true.
something
He hates
I do.
movie talkers. He hates them.
But Attack of the Clones is just one of those that I just can't stay focused in because of how slow it is. And that's not, don't get me wrong, like the Senate stuff is really cool, but that's not what people go to see Star Wars for. I know there are those that disagree, Andrew, but
It was very plot heavy, and it was very slow plot heavy, and they had a lot to explain in a single movie. I think if they had taken the time to explain kind of where they were going more in Phantom Menace, then maybe Attack of the Clones would have been a different movie. But they were very ambitious, it seems like, with what they were trying to fit all into one movie.
yes.
Alongside of trying to explain how Anakin becomes Darth Vader, they were also trying to explain where a secret army was made, and they were also trying to explain that the entire plot of Episode 1 is no taxation without representation.
Yeah.
So we pretty much agreed, and
Yeah,
a lot of these
100%.
we have similar thoughts and feelings about these. So moving on to number 9 on my list of the Star Wars movies in order. Number 9 for me is gonna be Last Jedi. I think it's gonna be. The look on your face makes me think yours might also be Last Jedi.
I have no idea what you're talking about. My number 9 is actually The Last Jedi.
I've never seen.
So-
never even seen this movie.
Yeah, let's just both get into this one.
So we were talking about this. Matt and I were talking about this before we started recording, and I think I have a unique perspective on The Last Jedi. It's like I'm not like other girls. It's I have a unique perspective on The Last Jedi in that I did not see it when it came out. I waited until I got Disney Plus about a month ago and watched it on there for the first time. Actually, I think it was on Netflix because I don't think it's on Disney Plus right now.
Right.
I waited, and I was like, well, Rise of the Skywalker is coming out soon. I probably should watch episode 7. And
Episode 8.
oh yeah, episode 8. It's weird saying that episode 8, 7, 8, 9. It's weird. For me, Last Jedi, it seemed a little lost. They could have called it the Lost Jedi. There's just a lot of. I don't care if there's people out there listening that haven't seen it. Spoilers ahead if you even care to do this, but come on. Luke dies because he's tired.
Okay, and like, honestly, if anyone out there is familiar with the term filler episode, that is when an episode is just kind of there because they needed to make an episode, but they didn't really have a plot in mind. And that's what The Last Jedi felt like.
We got to fill airtime.
For the most part. Now, like, there are definitely...
Looking at you, Casino Planet.
Oh my gosh, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. But no, so 2/3 of that movie felt like filler to me. And there were
You want to know the secret? It was.
It was. There were 3 main plot lines. There was Finn's plot line where he went to a casino planet to find a secret like coder or whatever.
A hacker.
It was a hacker.
Yeah.
He never ended up finding that hacker, but
Nope.
the one person he had an interaction with on that planet ended up having the same hacking skills that only that one hacker supposedly had.
Mm. Then they freed
That's
a bunch
just
of horses.
Deus Ex Machina, like the most amazing. Oh yes, it works out because fate.
Wow.
No.
What luck.
The second story that happened in that movie was Poe Dameron. Poe, one of my favorite characters of the Star Wars series. Okay, that entire plot line, I don't
Gets
care
thrown
who
in the
you
brig.
are. I don't care who you are. That entire plot line could have been avoided with communication.
And cruise control.
All they had to do was say, "Oh, no, we're not going to do your idea because we have this idea." And then he could have done literally anything else.
And he doesn't even... The only thing I could think of is that she doesn't want anybody to know her plan outside of her immediate circle of
But
advisors.
Poe is in her immediate circle.
But if she's not telling anyone, it might show, A, I don't trust anyone. I'm not sure about my plan. They're going to react the exact same way that they already did anyway. And honestly, I hate playing devil's advocate. I can't even remember. Is it Holdo? What's her name? Admiral Holdo? Something like that?
Disposable character number 4.
Disposable captain of the ship. Yeah, that entire thing just kind of made me mad.
Yeah.
We can only save so many people. We're going to fly our ship into the other ship,
Now,
which would have been cool, but she didn't have to stay on the ship. We were talking about this earlier, too. Where's a robot to fly the ship?
Autopilot.
Where's autopilot? Where's cruise control? Where's
And-
a button that says fly into that ship?
and like honestly, we could go on about The Last Jedi for the rest of this podcast
We should have had an episode
because there's
before The
also,
Last
you
Jedi.
know, Leia flying through space because, you know,
because
why
the
not?
Force.
And then also, you know, General or Supreme Leader Snoke, whatever his actual title is,
The most
who-
powerful Sith in the galaxy.
one of the
can
most powerful
transport
people in
himself
the
across
series and has all of these powers and came out of nowhere. You want some backstory? Too bad because he's dead.
Ooh, looks like Kylo Ren was a little too sneaky for Snoke.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, let's just go ahead and move on to number 8.
I will say there is one redeeming quality in The Last Jedi and in The Force Awakens that doesn't really
The
matter with
visuals.
my list. The way those movies look is gorgeous. Going from 4, 5, and 6 back in the 70s and 80s, I mean, for that time, groundbreaking. It still looks really good. They hold up. I mean, for an old movie.
Right.
And just thinking of, I did a bunch of research on how they did a lot of those effects, and I don't know how those people even thought that would even work, but it did somehow. The new movies look really good. Like, they're shot really well. Some of the camera angles in Last Jedi are really interesting. I think these are the best lightsabers ever.
Yeah.
A lot of the fight choreographing is really good. I really liked the palace fight with Kylo and Rey.
Yeah, no, that was really good.
I am mad that I don't know if Snoke actually died.
I hope he
Or
didn't
if he even
just
matters
because
at all.
I need some kind of backstory.
What a
on where he
ridiculous
came from.
ending to the entire thing. Anyway, all right, we need to move on. Let's move on to number 8. For my number 8, I had a little bit of a hard time separating these. They're back to back, and I knew they would be. So for my number 8, I kind of just flipped a coin almost, and I put Solo for number 8.
Okay.
It was a movie that happened. I can't say I was the biggest Solo fan. I was pretty excited when they announced it, and I was like, well, this could be interesting. It wasn't a bad movie or a terrible movie, and I love extended universe stuff.
Yeah.
I just can't say I was super captivated, but I mean, that's just me.
Yeah. Okay. And that leads into my number 8, which is The Phantom Menace. Now, I will say, like, from here on out, I really like the rest of these movies.
Same.
Like, it was really hard separating them, and a lot of these can honestly be interchangeable.
It's a very nitpicky list.
Yeah, we had to make a list in order, so we just did. But yeah, some of these could go back and forth depending on the day, really. But anyways, 8, Phantom Menace, gave us another one of my favorite characters of the entire series, Darth Maul. One of the coolest characters, even though he has like a line in the movie. Coolest looking characters.
He comes back.
I know he does. He has the best lightsaber in the entire movie series.
Most interesting.
Yes. Also, as a kid, I really liked the pod racing. Now this is pod racing.
This is podcasting.
And I and I still like the pod racing, not podcasting. I mean that too, but yeah. But no, I still like the pod racing. I don't like the no. This is pod racing. That line was just dumb. And really, a thing that brings Phantom Menace down for me is the kid that played Anakin. Just it seems like they just picked him up off the street.
He was really young.
Yeah, he was really young. I didn't like the forced romance that was implied in this movie between him and Padme, who was at the time
14.
like 8 years older than him.
She
or
was
something
14
like that.
and he was 9.
The character?
The Anakin is 9 in Phantom Menace and she's 14.
Okay, which isn't like, I guess isn't as bad, but the actress was 18 and the actor was like 10, which is very bad. But anyways, like that was a problem.
The time gap between 1 and 2, it really doesn't make sense because he literally triples in size.
Yeah, I know.
In 3 years.
It's the midichlorians. But anyways, no, like I didn't like Anakin. I didn't like Jar Jar. I would have liked him if they would have just stuck with him being the Sith Lord. We all know you were going to do it. You should have stuck with it, stuck with your guns. It would have been a way better story. And then also, like you said, with Attack of the Clones and the visuals. So I rewatched the second half of Phantom Menace last night because my roommate's going through all of the movies. And there are times where literally all it is like a Windows home screen pasted to the outside of a window. And that's all it is. It looks terrible.
Now, I think the worst CGI in that movie is the Gungans. Hands down. Jar Jar and all of his other
I think you need to take a look at the
siblings
backgrounds again.
Well, the background you can get away with, I think, by just saying
Disagree.
The camera's far away and it's hard to green screen something that small back then. They were using what? They didn't even have Windows XP back then. Think about that.
Yeah.
However they were doing it. But
Sorry.
That's one story, but having to interact with a character who is technically there, he's motion captured.
Like the entire time, yeah.
But having to interact with that, and then also the entire background of whatever you're doing is CGI'd as well, it's hard to get in. When I was a kid, I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Oh
right, and I was the same way.
And I was getting older, and it might be the same thing with video games where I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I ever play Ocarina of Time?
Man, Grand Theft Auto 5 looks terrible. It does not. Don't get me. But yeah.
It kind of just brings me out of the movie, and that's really my big thing with it. The rest of the movie is fantastic. I think it's really good.
Yeah.
I will say I still don't understand the pod racing. I don't get why it was as long as a sequence as it was. I get that it was to show that he's
Did you see the pod racing? I mean, come on.
Recently, I've watched all of the movies within the last month. Actually, within the last 3 weeks, I watched everything. But I will say, I was watching. Have you ever seen that documentary about episode 1? I think it's episode 1.
No.
It's called. I almost want to call it A Field of Dreams, but I can't remember what it's called.
That's a baseball movie
I know.
about. Yes.
It's got a name like that, but it's basically about the special effects for that movie, and it's really interesting how they did all of that.
Okay.
Especially the pod racing. It's like I can't even explain it.
The best scene in Star Wars history.
Go and look up how they did all the pod racing stuff, and it's very interesting.
Oh, and also before we move on from The Phantom Menace, I do want to say it has one of the best lightsaber battles in the series.
Oh yeah, and one of the best songs.
Oh, Duel of Fates. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Everyone,
I think that is my favorite Star Wars song.
The fact that everyone knows the name of that orchestral piece in The Phantom Menace.
But yes, in case you're confused of which lightsaber battle I'm talking about, it's the Obi-Wan / Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul toward the end.
It's
so good.
third lightsaber fight of the entire movie.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, no, it's great.
so good.
Yeah.
That entire thing, watching, and that movie made me really like Qui-Gon.
Well, that is the only movie he's in. So.
Yeah, but they did a good job of you were attached to Qui-Gon.
No,
by
I
the
agree.
Time he's dead at the end. So, all right. For me, moving on to number 7. Like I said, these two were split back to back for me, and that's gonna be Rogue One. My number 7 is Rogue One. Thoughts?
I think it was snubbed. But yeah, like we said, this one just kind of like not this one movie, but like once we get to this point in the list, like a lot of these are interchangeable because they're all good. They're all good. But yeah,
and that doesn't mean I'd have a whole lot against Rogue One. It's just I like the other movies more.
So what are your exact thoughts on Rogue One? I'll get there soon, but not yet.
I did not see it in theaters when it came out, and I also didn't see Solo in theaters when it came out.
Not a true fan. Go on.
I saw a take the other day, and then when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, I agree with this. And this person, I believe it was on Twitter, said Rogue One would have been better if it was more chase movie through space and more Darth Vader destroying everything, because I think that scene where he's just cutting things with his lightsaber, awesome. That's the only time I think you ever see Vader just lose it.
That's 100% true. Like Darth Vader is supposed to be like this all powerful being. Maybe not that strong.
No, he's supposed to be ridiculous.
But in the original trilogy, I will say one of my problems with the original trilogy is they don't really show that too often. Like the lightsaber battles are kind of slow and calculated. Which I mean, yes, he is technically older at that
pretty
point,
old.
But
I think a lot of it was
this Rogue One. If he can still do all of that, he should be able to do it in A New Hope as well.
I think some of that might have been when it was made, and either hadn't fleshed out who he was going to be as a character and the technology of the lightsaber fight.
No, and I totally agree. But I mean, I'm a continuity person, so yeah.
Yeah, yes, and if you ever do get into the extended universe stuff that is canon, Darth Vader does some crazy stuff.
Yeah, especially in his comic.
He is the most powerful, and the suit is a limitation, and
it's also kind of a risky but bold fashion choice.
It does. I was reading up on some of his canon, and that the suit is designed on purpose to be pretty painful to keep him angry.
Right.
And that it kind of made Palpatine Sidious sad whenever, or upset, angry, whatever, whenever he got injured that badly, because he was kind of hoping that he was going to have like a ridiculous Jedi just like weapon at his disposal, and then he gets limited like that. But seeing that the suit definitely does still amplify what he can do, and there should have been more of it in everything Darth Vader was in.
Now, and speaking of hope, my number 7 is A New Hope. I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for having this pretty low on my list. It's just, if you go back and watch A New Hope, don't get me wrong, it is a good movie, but similar kind of to Attack of the Clones, not much really happens. It's like,
no, it really doesn't.
It's the exposition for the trilogy.
I had no idea how long it was.
Oh, yeah.
Until I watched it again recently, and it's like over 2 hours long.
Yeah. Well, and like, it's good, but like I said, it's the exposition for the trilogy, and that's what the movie sets up to do. And like, yes, there is a lot of cool stuff that happens in it They introduce Han Solo, Chewbacca, really all of the mainstay characters in a way that you will like them and grow to love them and stuff like that.
Setting up an entire universe.
But like I said, that's what it's doing. It's setting everything up. And with that, it kind of struggles a little bit. The movie itself doesn't, but that's what kind of holds it down for me personally.
I wonder how much of that is based on what movies back then were like. When that movie came out, I wonder if we had the same attitude about movies now if we did back then, if we would think that. Because I know a lot of movies back then were not as fast-paced.
Well, and I think that is a big part of it. Because when I watched it as a kid, I loved it. And I still love it, don't get me wrong. But it was one of my favorite movies, all of that stuff. But as I go and rewatch it, maybe it's because I've seen it so many times at this point, it's just falling kind of a little down my movie list.
It is the slowest, I think, of all of them.
Attack of the Clones, but yeah.
They do more in that movie. There is more movement in Attack of the Clones.
Okay. Physical movement, yes.
That's what I mean. Literally physical movement. All right, so moving on to my number 6. I'm going to have to say is Force Awakens. And my biggest... There are several issues I have with Force Awakens. But my biggest issue I have with Force Awakens is that it is... the pitch meeting was... The pitch meeting for Force Awakens was, hey, you guys remember A New Hope? And everyone in the room was like, yeah. And they're like, did you guys like that movie? And everyone was like, yeah, it was kind of slow, but yeah, it was good. And the person in charge of that meeting there was like, all right, guys, what if we did A New Hope, but instead of Luke Skywalker, it's a girl who we don't know who she is? And everyone was just like, everyone paused. Everyone paused, and then in the back of the room, you just heard someone go. And there was just a slow clap, and everyone applauded, and everyone.
And it was just that one guy.
And they were like, all right, we're going to do it. We're going to remake shot for shot A New Hope. But we're going to add in some aliens.
Ooh. Yeah, I guess New Hope didn't really have too many aliens.
Nope.
Huh?
Yeah. It was probably a good way to revamp the this new trilogy, set it all up. I think if it was a standalone movie, I would have been kind of upset, but knowing that its purpose was to set up future movies, I kind of let that slide. And yeah. Okay. I don't have a ton to say about The Force Awakens. It's kind of just there.
See, and I have stuff to say about it, but we'll get to that later. So my number 6 is Rogue One. And I knew we would get here eventually, obviously, because it's a movie about Star Wars. And I really liked Rogue One. I didn't think I would. Because it was a spin-off, I was like, I went into it like with low expectations. Like, I knew it took place like 30 minutes before A New Hope started.
Yeah, the day before, yeah.
And I was like, I'm going into this, and I know exactly what's going to happen to all of these characters because they're not in the other movie. So I'm not going to let myself like any of these characters. I'm not going to like this movie. And then I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved the characters. I loved the movie. They did something that... like, it proved me wrong. And I'm a pretty stubborn person about some stuff. And when a movie like that can prove me wrong, like, I love it. It was a good movie. It showed what of a BA Darth Vader could be. It showed so much. It was just good. It was a really good movie.
Yeah, and I think that since they knew exactly how it ended, they knew where that last scene was going to end up. And I think that helped. I think that helped to give them a very clear roadmap of what that movie needed to be in order to make it believable, fit in the continuity, all that. And I think that helped kind of guide it along in a way that Last Jedi and Force Awakens didn't really have. They didn't really have a vision of where they needed to end up, and that one had a very clear ending. They knew the ending before they even wrote the movie.
Exactly, and it's so good.
I'm gonna have to watch it again. I've only seen it once. So for my number 5, Matt has already passed this on his list. My number 5, Phantom Menace, and we kind of already talked about that. I think I remember the name of the documentary. I think it's called Empire of Dreams. I think that's what it's called.
That's fair. Okay.
I could be wrong, but that's my guess.
There's no way to know.
I think I thought some of the stuff with like the midichlorians was kind of cheesy. Going back and reading what George Lucas was intending by that, it kind of makes sense. In the movie, it kind of makes it sound like there's little aliens that are living inside of you, but the way he actually explained it on, I think it was like a late night show or an interview he did, it was basically like
Tosh.0.
it was a mix between mitochondria and chloroplast, like in plants.
The powerhouse of the cell.
Powerhouse of the force. It all makes sense.
Oh no. Anyways.
I think they rushed through that. They didn't explain it very well, and it made it sound like there was little aliens that gave you the force in your blood, and that wasn't really what he was going for. But yeah, enough on Phantom. Moving on. Oh, wait, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is Revenge of the Sith.
Nice.
Revenge of the Sith is also a great one. I don't know why it's not higher on my list, but I just love my 1 through 4 so much that
It's the strongest of the prequel trilogy.
100%. Like I don't think there's any debate to that. Revenge of the Sith, I remember seeing it in theaters when I was a child and just loving it. I was like, this is what Star Wars is supposed to be. For some reason, as a kid, I don't think I connected that Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader until that movie. I for some reason, it just went over my head. Either that or I don't remember it being crazy. But just seeing Anakin's slow/quick descent into like madness, and it was kind of like Yoda's kind of prophecy from A Phantom Menace, where it's fear leads to anger leads to hate leads to the dark side, essentially. And that's exactly what happened. We see all of that happen beat by beat, step by step in Revenge of the Sith. That's such a good movie. Another one of the best lightsaber battles is between
the action in that movie. Every single piece of action in that movie is top notch. Everything Star Wars should be. The starship fights, awesome.
Yeah.
The space battles, awesome. The lightsaber fights, awesome.
Yeah, between Obi-Wan and Anakin at the end, that's just such an iconic and now memeable scene, and it's so great. We get to see Yoda just go ham. Obi-Wan rides a weird alien dragon thing.
Yeah, it's like a weird lizard.
But I like it. I don't know what it is,
I think.
but it was cool. And one of my favorite villains besides Darth Maul was General Grievous. I just thought he was really cool. I still don't to this day understand what he is. I know he's technically organic, but
he's an alien, and that suit was basically like kind of an early version of, if I understand right, it was kind of an early version of Darth Vader.
Like a protector armor.
It's like an exoskeleton that he was put in, and that's something I wish that they had explored more of in the movie, was who is. And I think that's kind of what Clone Wars, the movie, and the TV show kind of attempt to explain.
Which, disclaimer, I've only seen 2 episodes.
They're not in
the
this
show,
list,
so I've not seen any of it.
They kind of they get more into that, but a lot of people didn't watch those, and so I think it was kind of lost on like, who is this person and why is he here? He's not actually a Jedi. He just steals lightsabers.
Right.
Yeah, strongest of the original trilogy. I did rewatching it. My last watch through of it was recently, like I said, and my biggest nitpick with it was that it seemed like the pacing was a little strange. It seemed like it moved very quickly, quicker than I remember. But
Yes.
it's not a terrible thing. They had a lot to cover. And
They learned from Attack of the Clones.
is over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Everyone forgets that. All of those movies are over 2 hours long.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to your number 4.
My number 4, Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
Easy enough. Yeah, same thought. Best of the prequel, seeing Anakin actually transform into it. A lot of people give Hayden Christensen a bad rap for how he played Anakin.
Which they shouldn't.
I don't think that any problem with it was actually his fault. I think it was all the complaints people have are basically with his script and
Jar Jar was gone, so they needed something to complain about.
His relationship with Padme does move a little quickly, it seems like, but in the movies there is a significant gap of time in between each one, so they can't really explore the entire thing. So moving on. What was your number 4?
My number 4 is actually The Force Awakens. Partially because Force starts with 4. But no, really. So kind of the reason you didn't like Force Awakens is the reason I did. Like you guys probably remember, A New Hope was kind of low on my list. And The Force Awakens was A New Hope, but bigger, and it moved faster. So I liked it.
Oh, no. I loved it for that. I just think it's funny that was my exact thing. This is exactly the same thing.
And it really is. Like, I realized it during the movie. During the movie, I said one thing to myself and asked myself a question. The thing I said to myself was, if they say that this Death Star is just bigger and more powerful, I'm going to lose it. And that's exactly what happened. It was basically a planet that can destroy 5 planets instead of 1. And then throughout the movie, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be surprised if there's some, older, wiser character who's seen as kind of like a father figure or a person who's training someone who dies in this movie. Who's it going to be?
Obviously, yeah.
And then halfway through the movie, I look over at whoever was sitting next to me, and I said, I think Han Solo's going to die. And he did. Spoilers, I'm very sorry if you haven't seen the movie, but if you haven't, then why are you listening to this? But yeah, like, it is beat for beat A New Hope, but it looks better, it runs faster.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And the action's better.
And I think that it's set. I think Force Awakens was kind of showed off that they learned from some of the mistakes of the prequel trilogy, in that the technology is a lot better, so they could get away with a lot more crazier stuff. But at the same time, the stuff that was going to look super fake, they used practical effects instead, and I think that was a major plus. And a lot in Last Jedi is fairly practical as well. So
right.
Moving on to my number 3, and if I can read my notes here, my number 3 is Empire Strikes Back.
How dare you?
The movie is pretty badass, and it scared me to no end when I was little. When I was really young.
Really?
I don't know why, but that movie just terrified me. I thought Darth Vader was scary. I thought Bespin was scary. The Cloud City.
Jabba.
Not him so much. But the idea of them, and I didn't actually catch this until I watched it recently, that the reason they put Han Solo in carbonite was to test it for Luke Skywalker. I never caught that when I was younger, and it took me watching it when I was 25 to hear that one line.
Yeah.
We'll test it for Skywalker. It gave me a new appreciation for Lando, and I haven't seen this movie in years.
Well,
honestly.
I think that one's actually the first one with Lando.
No, I mean just from previous impressions of it.
Oh, okay.
Just seeing what he was actually doing.
rewatching it.
Yeah, rewatching it.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But obviously iconic. One of the most iconic movie scenes ever. I am your father. No.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the
Pod race.
yeah. Now this is pod racing.
No, finding out that Luke is the son of Darth Vader.
Yeah, no, I'll get into that more.
I was watching an interview with Mark Hamill recently about him talking about when he found out that they basically came up to him in secret and they were like, all right, nobody knows this. You can't tell anyone. But when we are filming this movie, you're going to find out Darth Vader is Luke's father. And he was like, what? And they're like, you can't tell anyone.
Now, the one thing that just upsets me is this is going to take a little tangent real quick. For those of you that have seen Pitch Perfect out there, they make the point that Vader...
Please tie this in.
Vader is German for father, apparently. I don't speak German, so I cannot confirm.
Oh, yeah, it is.
So his name is technically Darth Father.
Dark Father.
Whatever.
That's what Darth means.
And I guess more of us should have seen it. But
Did you speak German?
no, I wonder if in the German version of the movie they just call him Dark Father, and then they just like, oh, what a creepy name.
No.
Yeah, I know. But still, no.
It's pronounced a little differently in German.
That kind of,
I took German.
ruins it. But we will get back to this later.
Well, and honestly, it makes sense that they called him that in episode 4, knowing that he was going to be a dad, but they didn't know that when they were planning it. Or when they gave him the name in 3, it was just the name they gave him.
Now, so moving on to my number 3. This was much lower on your list. It was Solo.
Yeah, you really liked that one.
I did. So it's one of, even if it weren't a Star Wars movie, I would have liked it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite types of movies. It's kind of like a buddy road trip movie mixed with a heist movie, and I really like that. It goes over the Kessel Run, which is just great. It has Emilia Clarke, which
you know what's funny though?
Clarke. Woody Harrelson's great. The cast is fantastic. The story is fantastic.
When you said Kessel Run, I noticed that in all of the newer Star Wars movies, starting with Force Awakens and now going into the Mandalorian, they talk about this so much. They love parsecs now.
Parsecs.
I think that's
Parsecs of Pokemon.
I think that's so funny that every chance they get to throw that in, there's like, yeah, it's something parsecs.
Yes. But yeah, no, I love Solo. It's a great cast, a great story. Yes, there are parts of it that are predictable.
Mm.
For those of you that haven't seen it, skip 30 seconds. There's a little bit of spoilers. But Emilia Clarke's character betraying Han, I saw it coming a mile away, but it was still great.
Mm.
It was acted out very well. Darth Maul made a return, so it showed people who haven't seen the Clone Wars or any of that Darth Maul is alive. We don't know how. I mean, the people that have seen the movie don't know how, but yeah. I will watch the Clone Wars eventually.
I don't know if they explained it in there. I haven't actually seen the Clone Wars all the way through.
Fake fan.
There's so much of it.
I've only seen 2 episodes. So.
Hatred. He hated Obi-Wan so much that even though he cut him in half, and fell down the shaft to wherever, who knows where, he was so angry and so full of hatred that it kept him alive.
So if you skipped 30 seconds, you probably should have skipped a minute. But anyways.
It's a Sith skill. Is it possible to learn this power?
But anyways, moving on to your number 2.
New Hope, because it's...
The Force Awakens, but smaller and slower.
My grandpa made us watch these when we were younger, and this was the order he made us watch them in. We watched these before Phantom Menace came out, so I was still really young when we started watching these.
Yeah.
But A New Hope, first Star Wars movie I ever saw, just millions of other people. That was the first foray into the Star Wars universe, and it kind of always has that special place in my heart. Obviously, pretty much any of these movies looks better. The pacing is better. The effects are better. The sound is better. Everything is better. But there is
a little bit of an emotional attachment.
There is a very nostalgic element to it, and it, especially in how innocent the entire movie is. The entire thing is basically, this kid is just a good kid, and let's see what he can do whenever he has to stop being so timid and like rise to the occasion. And nothing,
the Skywalker has to rise.
Nothing suggests that he's like, the only time he's like kind of angsty, he was like, I was gonna go to Toshi Station and pick up some power converters with my friends. And it's like his one like rebellious teenage moment is like, I don't want to go. But there is a very nostalgic element to the first time you get to see Star Wars, and I think that's why it's number 2 on my list.
I totally agree. Now, my number 2, I think, is your number 1, because it's the only one you haven't said. So let's just go ahead and talk about it. Return of the Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
Which originally was Revenge of the Jedi, but people got upset, so they had to change the title.
They didn't like the word revenge.
Yeah.
But, my number 2, your number...
Nope, other way around. My number 2, your number 1.
Yeah, your number 2, my number 1, Return of the Jedi. Yeah, so good.
It's so good.
It's
good. One of the perfect endings, maybe not perfect, but like it's one of the best endings you could have asked for a trilogy. Still one of the best endings for any trilogy out there.
They could have ended it there and it would have worked.
And they did for 20 years.
A long time, yeah.
Yeah, but really, Return of the Jedi, there's so much to like about it. It starts off with a bang, kind of literally, bringing back Han, introducing kind of Boba Fett more, even though they originally just really quickly got rid of him. The whole scene in the desert, it starts you just in the middle of everything. You're like, what is happening? Where is this going?
Yeah.
Like, and you're like, oh, Luke's undercover and everything's happening. Okay, cool. And then it just leads into eventually like the fall of the Empire. And
the fulfilling of the prophecy.
Honestly, Endor is one of my favorite. I guess it's technically a moon off of Endor or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, but the Ewoks.
Oh.
I love the Ewoks.
They're all people. I think that's what made it good.
Ewoks are people too.
They weren't... I think that was a brilliant thing. The costumes in all of those original movies, so good. Especially in episode 6.
Slapped.
Yeah, they slap hard. And I wonder how they found that many people to fit inside of those costumes.
I know.
Casting call for that. We need 100 people.
We need a lot of just really little people to wear bear costumes.
But in space, they're space bears.
What movie is
and
this
they
again?
Squeak. And they worship a robot.
But yeah, it's just a fantastic ending to the entire...
The redeeming of Darth Vader.
Oh my gosh, yes. Where he thought he was going to bring Luke to the dark, but then Luke showed that everyone has a little goodness inside of them. Cheesy in theory, but back then it wasn't like cheesy, or it wasn't a trope necessarily back then. That's what started the trope. It's just so good.
That fight was really good, and just seeing the complete 180 in Darth Vader being like, you know what, I did mess it up. And once he found out that he had a daughter, I think is where it really started to change in those movies. In the original trilogy, that once he kind of figured out that things were... I think a lot of his pain was thinking that he'd lost his kids, and then when he found out that he was pretty far gone whenever he found out that Luke was his son, because he didn't find that out right away. And
your kids are really just the friends you make along the way.
I think once he realized that his kids were so adamantly opposed to everything he was doing, I think he had to take a step back and realize that, wait a minute, I'm the bad guy here. My bad guys.
It's literally called the dark side. How did I not see this before?
But the I think seeing that there was still that he had done some good, that he had put good into the world, and I think that kind of helped change his mind and get over the fact that he pretty much murdered his wife.
Yeah. Now, and that I guess leads me to my number one, which is Empire. Empire is, obviously in my opinion, but the best Star Wars movie.
Really, I think that was the first what we think of now as Star Wars movies.
Yeah. So there are three major things that make it my favorite. First of all, Lando. Lando, which
Awesome.
also, when he comes back in Solo, is Donald Glover. Love Donald Glover. I left him out earlier. Lando's a great character.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see him betraying. That was a big twist that no one saw. Another big twist, probably arguably one of the biggest movie twists ever when it came out, was the Darth Vader one, which we already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, okay, his name means Dark Father, but the
Nobody in
average
America got
American did not know that. And even if you do know his name is Father, you just think it's, okay, whatever. You don't think it's
He's
Luke's
the father of evil.
you don't know exactly what it means until you see that scene. Now, everyone and their mom knows that Darth Vader is Luke's father. We all know that. But at the time, that was an amazing twist, probably one of the biggest twists in any movie that had ever come out before. And that's a huge deal. And then the third thing, when it came out, that was one of the first movies with a real significant cliffhanger.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Now, Back to the Future technically had cliffhangers going before it, but it was really just, oh no, we have to go back again, and that's the cliffhanger. It wasn't like anything like, okay, life or death.
They lose in Empire.
Yeah,
They
Empire
lose.
Strike Back. They lose. They lose the fight.
And
Han
it
Solo
ends.
gets
that's just
trapped
how it
in
ends.
carbonite, and it ends. The first time I saw that, I was like, what?
There is another one?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, we're going to watch it right now.
And people make a big deal about, and spoilers for some Marvel movies coming up, people make a big deal about how Infinity War ended, and how they lost. They lost at the end of Infinity War. That's a huge deal, all of that stuff. Star Wars did it 40 years ago, basically. And it's a huge deal. Because the hero is supposed to win, and when he doesn't,
It's not satisfying.
it's not satisfying. You want to see what happens next, and it feels almost more real
Yeah,
because
you don't always win.
And I know this is me kind of grasping at straws, maybe, but in real life, you don't win 100% of the time, and it makes it a more real and relatable story when something like that happens. When the hero doesn't win for once.
Yeah, you definitely get more. You definitely get more emotionally invested, I think, in Empire. Like you said, because you lose and you're like, I have to know what happens. How could this happen? How is this going to resolve? Because back then, they didn't know how Star Wars was going to end.
Right.
It blew their minds that they lost. And for all they know, that could have been the end of it. But I highly doubt that they were thinking that was going to be the end of it. But any movie, that could be the end of it.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that there's going to be 3 movies. But the...
Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, R.I.P. Go on.
Future Avery, there's going to be some editing here.
Edit that out.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Just put a smiling hamburger.
It's going to have that little technical difficulty.
Beep. Heroes were losing.
What was I going to say? That...
So, for the next part.
I remember. I'm going to make a noise here so I know that...
Sorry, Champy.
And I think one of the really cool things about Empire and going back and watching it now versus not having seen it in several years is, and knowing more about what was kind of going on in Star Wars canon, like in the extended universe and the books and stuff, the stuff that stayed after Disney bought it, is that you can see in those movies that Darth Vader is planning something behind Palpatine's, Sidious's back. and
Right.
he's going and acting on it, and I never got that originally. I thought he was just trying to trick Luke, but I think he really was. After you've seen episode 3, all Anakin really wants is to have a family, to set things the way he thinks is fair, and to basically not lose. And in his mind, he's losing constantly because he lost his wife, kids, and best friend, read as Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right.
And when he sees that he has a chance to do all of those things, minus his wife and best friend, in recruiting his son to work with him to fulfill everything he wanted in the prequel trilogy, it's kind of a nice... They did a nice job of foreshadowing that moment. If you were looking for it and paying attention, it's there, and that was really cool to see that he is actively trying to basically do what Luke was wanting to do, but for different reasons, trying to overthrow Sidious.
Yeah. Okay, so that's each of our top 10 movies.
But like I said, this was just the movies. My favorite Star Wars anything right now has to be Christmas special. My
Star Wars.
My top 10 Star Wars movies list is number 10 is actually Star Wars' Christmas special on VHS stuck in a VCR, and my number 1 is actually Star Wars: A Christmas Special that freely comes and goes from the VCR. The Mandalorian is so good.
It's so good. Yeah.
They aren't trying to prove anything. They're just trying to make badass Star Wars universe related stuff. And honestly, Baby Yoda is one of the greatest things that's graced.
Wait, there's a Baby
TV
Yoda?
screens.
What are you listeners doing not watching The Mandalorian?
We don't know.
There's a Baby Yoda.
And the best thing is, it's a puppet.
But it doesn't look like... It's not like an Elmo puppet.
Yeah. No, it's like really good how they did it.
Yes.
And that makes it a lot more believable because you can see him pick it up.
Yes. Now, one more thing that we're going to do before we sign off is some predictions for The Rise of Skywalker. I say...
The day before.
Technically the night of, but it's fine.
Are you going to go see it?
I'm seeing
tomorrow?
it Saturday morning.
Saturday?
Now, I say what we do is we make one that could be a realistic prediction and one that is just what we want to happen.
I want so many things.
Just you pick one.
Dang it.
So, I think for my realistic prediction, and this one's kind of almost spoiled by the trailers, but Palpatine's back to some extent. And that's not the prediction. I think Palpatine had a hand in bringing in Snoke. And Snoke's going to come back in some way, shape, or form. We're going to get more backstory for Palpatine and Snoke and how things have gotten the way they are and all of that stuff. I think that is my realistic prediction. Palpatine more than Snoke, but yes.
For how powerful they hype up Palpatine Sidious to be, his ending was lackluster. And I would not be surprised if he had survived and just laid low, trying to rebuild his empire.
And his laughter's in the trailer.
Yeah, but whether or not he's just like a Force ghost, because that's also a possibility.
Ooh.
Ghost.
Ooh.
Toast.
Anyways, go on to your realistic prediction.
Well, I think the Palpatine thing is very possible that he's actually back and it's not just like a haunting laughter that people kind of recognize match up with evil. Especially if you stop to think that his master was Plagueis the Wise.
Right.
And he's like one of the scariest, most like name recognized Sith. And Palpatine died. He got thrown down a well.
Right, exactly.
Well, Darth Maul got thrown down a well with his legs cut off, so I think Palpatine could survive a little trip down the
but
well.
Darth Maul is fantastic.
So I wouldn't be surprised there. One of my realistic predictions is they win.
What?
I think in some way it's going to, with a name like Rise of Skywalker. Is it Rise of the or Rise of?
I think it's just Rise of Skywalker.
I think that it's either going to come out that somehow Rey is related to the Skywalkers somehow. I don't think she is. I think she is just kind of a nobody. Because there's Force-sensitive nobodies everywhere. They showed that in The Last Jedi. There's that little kid who picks up the broom with the Force to sweep on the...
I did like that part of Last Jedi.
Because it kind of shows that they're not actually gone.
Right.
It's just that it's going to take some time to rebuild. And I think the title might be more of an idea, or him becoming so powerful in the Force, because he was doing some pretty insane stuff with the projection. Luke was.
Right.
So I could see them doing some major backtracking and be like, no, he's still in the movie. I think my realistic prediction is going to be something along the lines of they somehow bring more of a balance to whatever is the overarching problem of the Force and the Sith versus Jedi debate kind of thing. Because a big debate that the Jedi and the Sith were having was how to approach being a user of the Force, and the Jedi religion and the Sith religion were very different. And I think that there's room in the middle to where you can, have feelings and act on your feelings as long as you're not mastered by them.
And I think that is a great point. And another part of Last Jedi that kind of feeds into that is when Luke is training her in the ways of the light side of the Force, but she's like tempted by that dark side and kind of has both. So I think the true balance of the Force isn't that there's an equal number of light and dark users. I think it's that you learn how to do both. I think you're completely spot on with that.
And I think that they did kind of, and I think it kind of shows that, in real life, that nobody is one extreme, good or bad. Everybody has good and bad, and depending on how you kind of feed like the good side of you or the bad side of you is kind of who you are as a person. And I think I can understand what the Jedi were trying to do in this like monastic warrior kind of approach to using the Force. And it's a pretty big responsibility what they're doing, but I think they took it a little too far. And I think you did start to see them becoming like political actors, and that's kind of what Anakin was being lied to about, but it was kind of happening. And even if in Revenge of the Sith, even if they had taken over, I think those guys were good, but anybody who just takes control of power is usually not something that ends well. So I think in some way they're going to bring actual balance. And who knows, maybe that's the Skywalker that actually brings balance to the Force, and that's what they go with.
If she's a Skywalker.
Well,
now,
any of the Skywalkers.
Right. Now.
Because Leia's in this movie.
Correct. What I think is my outlandish hope and prediction is there's going to be toddler/adolescent Yoda meeting up with Rey, and at the end of the movie, they go on and use the Force together. Not romantically, but just, as friends.
The baby Yoda,
and
you mean?
Also, yes, baby Yoda is
like
now adolescent/toddler Yoda, because the age is slower. At this point, he would be probably closer to like 75, 80 in Yoda years. So he'd be more toddlery, adolescent-y.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe able to talk to like, bah, 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 like stuff like that.
Maybe.
And also, in addition to that, I think there's going to be a Force projection you know how like they can talk to the old user of the Force and all that stuff.
Mm.
Of obviously Mark Hamill as Luke,
Mm.
but also Hayden Christensen
I think
as
that's
Darth
a very
Vader,
real possibility.
and also Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan.
I think that's a very real possibility that those actors reprise their roles. And
Yeah.
I'm almost tempted to go look at the credits to see who's credited in the movie.
Right.
My prediction that I was somewhat leaning toward the first time I watched Last Jedi is that Rey is a clone and that she doesn't matter. But that's what ultimately makes her like a hero, that she comes from that like lineage of the clone troopers. It was like a very niche conspiracy theory that I saw like online, and I was like, that actually kind of makes sense when she looks in that little mirror thing and there's just her, like an infinity of her, like that she doesn't actually matter.
Okay.
And that she's like kind of that kind of nobody, or she came out the same way that Anakin did, no dad, made by the Force.
Yeah.
But I think she might just be the son of a drunk scavenger.
I think we do actually find out about her parents in this movie. I know they said, "Oh, it's no one important in The Last Jedi," but I think they're going to retcon that. But yes. Anyways,
I did see in the early reviews that this movie was like, what if we didn't have any idea what we were going to do, but we needed. What this person said was, J.J. Abrams' vision for Rise of Skywalker was why. What do we need to make? What do we need to do to make this movie successful? And they basically came up with the idea: remind people why they love Star Wars, and it's because they love to love Star Wars, and that the entire movie is just. You guys remember all those other Star Wars things that happened?
Oh, yes.
And it's one big nostalgia montage, just basically fan service.
I'm sure that's what it is.
The last
honestly.
fan service. But yeah, so that is, we're going to wrap it up, and that is our top. Actually, there's only 10, so we can't say that this is our top 10.
Those are our 10 definitive Star Wars. Not
Ranked.
definitive. Those are our 10 Star Wars movies ranked right now.
Yep. And
I guess
who
we'll
knows?
see where Last Jedi.
And
fits in.
we'll probably do another one after Last Jedi, just dedicated to that real short
The Rise
episode.
of Skywalker.
Ah, dang it. I keep getting the names mixed up, and I don't know why.
I know.
Maybe we'll do another one after Rise of Skywalker. Just break that down, give you our thoughts. But until then, I'm Avery, and
I am Matt.
And this was the first episode of the Expert Nerd podcast, and we look forward to being with you in the future.
Bye.